Hello, my name is Axel Adams. I am the National Director for the Rainbow Push Coalition 1000 Churches Connected program. Please join us November 3rd through the 5th, 2011 for the Rainbow Push Coalition Peachtree Street Conference in Atlanta, Georgia, to be held at the Hilton Garden Inn on Baker Street. This conference will provide the latest information on financial literacy, foreclosure prevention, telecommunications, education, and we have a number of workshops to be held for ministers, clergy. We have a clergy luncheon schedule, a birthday gala for Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., and a sports banquet. Learn cutting-edge strategies to grow your business and further your education. We must rebuild America and put Americans back to work. To register, please feel free to visit our website or call us at www.rainbowpush.org or www.rainbowpushatlanta.org or 404-525-5663. Again, 404-525-5663. Look forward to seeing you in Atlanta, Georgia.
Everybody, to you, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, in television and radio land, we are the Rainbow Push Coalition, people united to serve humanity. That's right, keep your hands together, everybody. Serving you is what we do. It is our sincere pleasure to be with you this morning, and we got a wonderful, wonderful service for you. We've got Olympic great Dr. John Carlos with us today. Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., who's going to with us. He's bringing a plan to show us how we can have jobs in this economy. We welcome you live to our national headquarters right here in Chicago, Illinois at 930 East 50th Street. If you're not here, you ought to be. Please go to the Word Network, the largest urban religious network in the world. We are coming to you live all over the world, London, Europe, Africa, Asia, throughout the United States. Go to www.rainbowpush.org. We are streaming live, and you can find out more about our programs. If you're in the Chicago area, go to WVON or WVON.com, where I host the midday show during the week. That's right. And we give much love to all of our sister cities in Los Angeles, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., all around the country, in London, all over the world. And we give a special, special shout out to the first chairman of our board of directors, our founding chairman, our chairman emeritus, Reverend Clay Evans of the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. They are naming a highway in Brownsville, Tennessee, his hometown, after him today. We love you, Reverend Clay Evans. Today, we want you to come and connect with us on the Rainbow Push Coalition. If you would like to get informed, get inspired, get involved. We are here for you every Saturday, every Saturday. Again, our address is 930 East 50th Street. Come on down, everybody. We've got something great for you. And join us on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson throughout the country, throughout the world. www.keephopealiveradio.com. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
your hands together today. Whoa, 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 whoa. I want to clap a little louder than before. I want to sing a little louder than before. I want to jump a little higher than before. Yes, I want to shout a little louder than before. Freedom, freedom. Clap your hands for freedom, sing a little louder than before. I want to jump a little higher than before. Yes, I want to sing a little louder than before. Freedom, freedom, say freedom, freedom. Clap your hands for no more chains, no more bondage. I am free. Yes. Hey, no more shackles, no more bondage. I am free. Yes. Hey, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. All the glory, all the honor belongs to you. On today, was I in praise? Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Lord, I love you for freedom. Yes. No more shackles, no more chains, no more bondage. I am free. Yes, yes. No more chains. I am free. Yes.
Oh, put your hands together, everybody, for the Rainbow Push Choir. I'm bringing before you a man who needs no introduction. Indeed, he has emerged as one of the great young leaders of our time, someone who stands up for the least of these, someone who stands up and allows God to use him in a very, very special way. Someone who I have known all of my life, all of his life, should I say. I'm dating myself. But God held his tongue when he was a little boy. And boy, when he loosed it unto the world. I want you to put your hands together for the national spokesman for the Rainbow Push Coalition, my brother, Jonathan Jackson, everybody.
Thank you, my sister, Santita. It's an honor to be before you today. Was that a wonderful song? Freedom, no more shackles, no more chain. I want to jump a little higher. I want to run a little faster. Freedom, I love that song. Congratulations and thank you for that. Today we have a very special day and you're going to see all these wonderful persons to come out. I want to thank God in a very special way for all of the special ed children. I want to thank God for all of the special ed children. I was at a conference the other day and I told them I'm here on behalf of the special ed children because I'm one. And I told those same parents, I've never seen a child that's not special ed. Every child has special educational needs. The question is, will we provide that for each and every child? One of our speakers today, you're going to hear from a legendary figure, a great American, a true American citizen, loyalist, and patriot. You're going to hear from an Olympic gold medalists that made us all proud. You're going to hear from my brother, the great Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. But it's my place and my privilege now to bring forth the man that I have the privilege of calling father, a man that goes around the world about peace, justice, and freedom. We met with Muammar Gaddafi to trying to bring an end to the stalemate with the United States and Europe over the Lockerbie victims. We met with Saddam Hussein together to see these men dragged out in the middle of the street like beasts. There is a more excellent way to go. When will we learn that we can drop these arms? We cannot relive the past where we've seen men hung from a tree with people gloating over their death, over the burial, over the burning of men here in the United States. Now we're seeing it in the streets of Tripoli. It's fundamentally wrong. Be it in Baghdad, be it in Tripoli, or be it in South Carolina, it's wrong. God cannot bless us until we bless the rest of the world. My father, our leader, the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
You don't know me, but I'm your brother.
Put your hands together.
I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world. But fairly soon the time will tell. Hey, you, yeah. You keep telling me the thing that you gon' do for me, yeah. But I ain't blind and I don't like what I think. I'm taking it to the street, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm taking it. Take this message to my brother. Now you will find him everywhere. When people try to live together through poverty and despair. Hey, you, yeah, you keep telling me the thing that you gon' do for me. I don't like what I think. I'm taking it to the street. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm taking it.
I am somebody. I am somebody. I am somebody. Respect me, protect me, never neglect me. Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop the violence. Save the children. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Put your hand together. Put your hand together. I want to express my thanks to you for your presence today. There's so much ground to be covered. Last week we were in Washington preparing for the dedication of the Dr. King statue on the Mall in Washington. I'm blessed by God to have been with Dr. King on that mall in flesh and blood in 1968 as he prepared to occupy the mall. Before there was a Wall Street occupation, there was a mall occupation called Resurrection City. With Dr. King was leading the drive at that time to challenge America to choose the war on poverty at home and not the war on Vietnam. To choose healing at home and not killing abroad.
He argued that bombs dropped in Vietnam could explode in American cities unless we change our priorities. And so here we are, 43 years later, with occupations all around the world about something called economic justice. Too much concentrated wealth upward, too many unnecessary expensive wars, too much violence and too much poverty, and thus the struggle continues. In the struggle, in this tug of war for the soul of America, don't lose your hold on the rope, because the fight continues. And so I want to thank the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity for all they did to help get that monument erected. But let me tell you that before the idea of the monument came, Congressman John Conyers, 3 days after Dr. King was killed, John Conyers put in a bill for a King holiday 3 days after he was killed in April of 1968. For 12 years, John Conyers languished virtually in the dark alone, saying, "Let's honor the memory of Dr. King." Many a cold day, we stood near the Washington Monument in the icy weather, led by John Conyers and just a handful of us. Somewhere along 1980, Stevie Wonder, who was pulled in as a part of John Conyers' artist, did the song "Happy Birthday, Martin Luther King." That popularized the idea and took it to another level. Became a great upsurge for the King holiday, driven by, in a greater measure, the Stevie Wonder song. And then actually this holiday was made law under President Ronald Reagan. But it was our street action, John Conyers at the foundation. Secondly, the artist power of Stevie Wonder, and then the signing of the bill by Ronald Reagan, and then the idea it should be concretized into a monument. That monument will be there forever. We thank all those along the way who made the monument possible. It seems that while we honor Dr. King on one day, we dishonor him on the next. The crisis in Libya, Gaddafi is gone, but the crisis has not gone. Within that country today, the basic black African Libyans have been rounded up and for the most part in jail facing violence within Libya today. There are conflicts and contradictions that are yet to be resolved, and it is our international burden when leaders are captured to take them to international court, not to execute them. That is not the law of international law. We cannot be a great nation and live above the law. We must, if we were expected to hold Gaddafi to a high standard, those who succeed him must be held to the same high standard of human rights. When our children who are driven by revenge and retaliation rather than reconciliation, when they look at a man's body laying in the morgue as an object of celebration, that means they will try the same thing. We're teaching them how to kill and be revengeful, teaching them how to retaliate, teaching them how to look at death shamelessly without a sense of pain or anxiety. We must be better than what we've seen on TV the last few days. It's one thing to say it was time for Gaddafi to leave, and perhaps it was. But what we've seen lately, this kind of celebration, this is a time for reflection, because if it applies to Libya, then what about Yemen? That's next. And what about Syria? And that's next. And what about troops in Uganda? And that's next. And is there any time left to help those starving in Somalia in that crisis as they're being driven to starvation by genocide? Where is our policy of humanity? Too much violence in the world today. Civilized people who care must go another way. Today we have one of the great change agents of our time with us today. When we think about the role of athletes, the reason why athletes must be so careful how they use these special gifts of God. You don't decide one day to be the fastest runner in the world. That's a gift of God. You don't decide to have the Jesse Owens legs and win the Olympics in 1936. It's a gift of God. And we hear one side of the story that when Jesse Owens won the race, they say Hitler would not shake his hand. Jesse Owens said, I came back home and Roosevelt wouldn't shake my hand either. I say Hitler wouldn't shake his hand, and Jesse Owens didn't have no White House reception for him either. And so he ran against those. Joe Louis knocking out Max Smith was a seminal moment in world history, led by, just as David slew Goliath and just as Samson the Philistine giant. These in the legacy of these giants. And so it was the 68 Olympics. Dr. King killed in April. Robert Kennedy killed in June. Democratic Convention exploding in July. And come the Olympics in Mexico in October. And here comes Tommy Smith and John Carlos, an act of defiance and dignity, saying our people cannot eat gold medals. We need dignity. The man today who was a medalist in that Olympics, who in many ways, beyond winning the gold medal, won our hearts. And for 40 years, has virtually been in exile. We intend to resurface the life and legacy of the great medalist, John Carlos. Give it up, John Carlos. On your feet for John Carlos. Look at a little of that film footage, too. Let me see him trying to give it up for John Carlos. Give it up. Put your hand together. There he is on that track. Look at him running. John Carlos and Thomas Smith, 1968.
Well, I'm really overwhelmed to be here with Rainbow Coalition. It's been a long fight, but I'm here to tell you that the fight continues. You know, in my household, you know, when we get in the fight, we roll up our sleeves and we say, never say quit, never say die until it's won. But I'm here to tell particularly my people, on my side of town, it's time that we step up to the plate and lend our support to what's happening in terms of Occupy Wall Street. We have to take into account as to what happened to that young man in Georgia, Mr. Troy Davis. It's time for us to step up one time and realize that the only way we're going to change our destiny is for us to change it. You know, we have to realize at the same time that there's no halfway commitment. There's a total commitment to success. And we're counting on the success of our children. You know, when you sit back and you think about it, we took a big hit in the drug epidemic. And we're still suffering as a result now through our kids in school, through poverty, through lack of understanding, the lack of moral character, and most of all, the lack of respect amongst our women. So, I mean, we got some things that we need to do. And the only way we're going to do these things is by show of force. I mean, be defiant don't mean that you had to blow up anything or burn anything down. Being defiant is say, I will no longer tolerate what's been happening over the decades. When you sit back, just have your kids to realize that 40 years ago, you had to go read volumes to find out your history. Today, you can go and push one button and learn more than you want to learn. But it's time for us to start learning. And most of all, let's make a concentrated effort to try and bring back the family unit. That's a big factor that we're missing. I can go on and on, but in the sense of time, I just want to tell you guys this has really been an emotional day for me to be here, to have an opportunity to speak with you. And I would hope that you would pick up my vibes and my blood and realize that when I stood there with all of you in my heart and my mind. And I want you to stand the same way. Thank you.
You know, I want, John has a little more to tell. John, why did you take the risk of an act of defiance, holding up your fist, and then what happened to you after you took that stand? And explain that fist to us.
Well, I took the risk because I felt it was so many people in the past. Out of all the people that come through this life, we only had chosen few that had the audacity to stand up for what was right. I recall as a young kid, we had a minister named Adam Clayton Powell. He stood. He impressed me. Another young man, he wasn't a minister, but Malcolm X. He stood. He made an impression. I looked at Dr. King. I had an opportunity to see him and speak with him. He took a stance. He made an impression. I could do no less relative to what I felt was taking place. There's so many individuals that are far more talented than me, far more wise than me, but they succumb to drugs. They succumb to the fact that there weren't opportunities for them to go to college, for the mere fact that many of them didn't have food in the morning to go to school, and teachers had no concern about the fact that we had hunger pains trying to learn. The mere fact that we didn't have any educational open doors to us or fair housing. Someone had to stand there and make a statement. By the grace of God, we had a young group of individuals called Olympic Project for Human Rights. We chose to make ourselves sacrificial lambs in society to make society realize that there's a very dire need that we take a look at ourselves.
After he took a stood, he faced upon his, where the Rosa Grill find you?
After the games was over, you know, once you make a statement, you know, the world comes at you. You know, the sunshine leaves and the storm comes. I was no longer able to have gainful employment. My kids were ridiculed in school. My parents had to deal with all sorts of turmoil on their jobs. My father was a shoemaker. We had multicolored people used to come in and use his services. After that, it was narrowed down to specifically black people. But the grace of God got me through it all. When I sit back and think about the mere fact that my wife took her life as a result of what took place in Mexico City, I often think to myself, if my wife had to leave this world, would I change my mind? And the bottom line is my wife would have had to die 1,000 deaths because I could never back up from who I am and where I'm going.
Put your hand together for Brother John Carlos. Put your hand together. This book, The John Carlos Story, is on sale here at Rainbow Push today, The John Carlos Story. And Mr. Zion Sand, the writer of this book who wrote with him, give him a big hand. Dave Zion, give Dave Zion a big hand. Sandy, I want a verse. As I prepared to bring on Mr. Al Penn, who's the head of ALNEC, the Abraham Lincoln National Airport Commission, a lot of talk around the nation there about the economic crisis. There were 3 outstanding articles in last week's papers. One was on Tuesday, the number of public sector jobs being lost by the thousands. Police and teachers and firemen jobs are being lost, closing schools, closing hospitals in the inner city, and closing post offices. And the next day, an article, $1 trillion in student loan debt, greater than credit card debt. Within a month, there'll be a trigger for $1.5 trillion cut. Thousands more jobs being lost without enough being created to alternatives for them. The right wing is on the march. And so the president said over and over again that we need to build airports. And they're building 100 in China, but not one here. Well, there is a ray of hope. And I want Brother Al Penn to come now and bring on the Congressman who for 15, in many ways, lonesome years, very much like John Conyers and Nicole for 12 years, trying to get the King holiday on our consciousness and said there is a way out, that there is a way to change the tax base. There is a way to have permanent employment. There is a way for our community to control an airport and build it. And so I want the man who has been by his side all the way, who has been the moving force behind this airport in many ways, Brother Al Penn. Al?
Good morning, Rainbow Push. It's good to see you all here this morning. As Reverend Jackson talked about, the economic climate within this nation is very critical. But I want to hone in on the south side of Chicago, and most importantly, the southern suburbs. The economic body on the south side of Chicago and the southern suburbs is in ICU. It's sick. Why? For those who live in the south suburbs, they can look at I-57 and understand that the blood flows north. No blood flows south. If you understand your body, if blood does not flow to any particular portion of your body, you will die quickly. And because of that, there's been a lot of talk over the last 16 years by Congressman Jackson about an airport. And let me tell you why it's so important. Because many of you who live on the south side of Chicago and the southern suburbs are operating in a slow death. Why? Because your quality of life has reduced itself. You get up at 5 in the morning, prepare yourselves to leave for work around 6:30. You travel an hour and a half to the western suburbs, to the northern suburbs, to earn a living, to work 8, 9 hours, maybe sometimes more, to come back and reverse commute another hour, hour and a half, in good weather, to get home, to not have enough time with your children, not have time with your family. It's a poor quality of life. Many of us wonder why our children underperform, because our parents are working too hard. They don't get enough rest. They can't take enough time. And because the blood has flowed north, that means that the body is dying slow in certain places. But see, I'm reminded of a prophet named Ezekiel, who was taken by God into the valley of dry bones. And he asked him a very serious question: can these dry bones live again? Well, Ezekiel, deferring to the Almighty, said, well, Lord, only you know. Well, God gave him a commandment, and he says, prophesy unto these bones, that these bones can live again. Well, here in the south side of Chicago and the southern suburbs, we do have dry bones. It's called underperforming schools. It's called underfunded schools. It's called joblessness. Is talking about jobs that are leaving the actual south side and the southern suburbs to go other places. We have dry bones here. But as Ezekiel was obedient, he prophesied to the bones and he said, yes, these bones can live again. And so God gave him one more commandment. He said, breathe unto these bones. Now I put an analogy here because to prophesy means you have to believe and you have to have faith. To breathe means that you have to decide that you're going to take steps and not get tired. And so prophesying with your breath means that you have decided that you're going to stand up and move. Breathe unto these bones, because in replacement of dry bones, we can have hotels. They will replace dry bones. We can have restaurants and professional buildings. They'll replace dry bones. We'll have logistical centers. They'll replace dry bones. And yes, we'll have an airport. But the final thing that the Lord God told Ezekiel was, I will settle you in this land, and because of that, you know I am God. Well, settle means to me that he gives you peace. He gives you calmness. He gives you a calm reserve that things are going to be all right. Well, I'm asking you to take up Ezekiel's command to not only believe that their dry bones can be replaced, but also breathe that you can stand and other people with you. One thing that was not mentioned was the fact that when those dry bones came out of the graves, there was a vast army. So we're asking you to come out of the grave and be that vast army for the south side of Chicago and the southern suburbs. Be the dry bones that come back together again. Oh yes, the South Side and the South Suburbs can live again. Because we've been fighting for a long time for an airport. For 16 years, there's been one person that's been championing the cause of the economic revival of the South Side of Chicago and the southern suburbs. His name is Jesse Jackson. Not the Reverend, not the senior, but the Congressman. When he ran in 1995, they asked him what would he do to change the economic climate. He talked about an airport. Well, he's been walking a long journey. Some laughed at him and some said it couldn't happen. But 16 years later, here where we stand, we have 2 worldwide developers. We have $700 million in funding. We have $1 billion in revenue bonds, and we're waiting on one person. I have faith, and I have breath, that dry bones, and I can prophesy to the breath that I can walk and not get tired. So let me introduce to you the individual that has been fighting for your cause, for jobs and equality, that's been fighting for the cause of economic balance, that's been fighting for the cause of reviving the South Side of Chicago and the southern suburbs. His name, and let's stand up for the Congressman Jesse Lewis Jackson, Jr.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation to Reverend Jackson, to Brother Al Penn for that very kind and very generous and very thoughtful introduction, to one of my heroes, Brother John Carlos, Brother Juan Carlos. Man stood up at the height of his popularity and symbolically took a stand on behalf of that which he knew was right. Give Brother Carlos another great round of applause, will you, everybody? Stand up, John. One of my heroes. I appreciate you, sir. Appreciate you. Today, Reverend Jackson has asked me to speak for the remainder of this broadcast on jobs. Jobs and where they are. I will honor that. But I want to come back to Rainbow Push real soon and present another project that I've been working on for the last 17 years, and it's called the History Series. The History Series. It's subtitled, What Dr. King Saw. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to need, Reverend Jackson, at your earliest convenience, 3 straight weeks in order to follow and do justice to the History Series. It will deal with the nowness of our circumstance. We will look back after the nowness of our circumstance to the past to arrive at how we got to the nowness. And a pattern will emerge from the past, the present, and the nowness of our history that will project and determine the future. It can be called nothing short of prophetic, but I will need 3 Saturdays in a row. I will be responsible for the audience. You will be responsible for the membership and the collection. It will be my gift to Rainbow Push. Amen? The greatest material need of the American people today is jobs. Jobs, jobs. The greatest need of the American economy today is aggregate demand. The most effective and efficient way to meet the jobs and aggregate demand in the spirit of FDR is for the federal government to directly hire workers to do the work that needs to be done. We can no longer wait on the private sector that is hoarding $2.5 trillion in private sector dollars to spend it on hiring people. They are not doing it. Giving them more tax breaks and more incentives to do what they are not doing is ridiculous. the fastest and most efficient way to hire and put the American people to work is for a government of, for, and by the people to hire the unemployed. The result of the federal government investing, building, and growing the economy and creating full employment will be the restoration of faith in the government. Somewhere I read that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. For the last 30 years, we've been bombarded with Ronald Reagan's conservative negative government rhetoric. Government is not a solution to our problem, Reagan said. Government is the problem. Now that's an interesting phrase. How can a government of, by, and for the people be the problem? Logically, it either says we don't have a government of, for, and by the people, or the people are the problem. Those are the only options that you have. If government of, for, and by the people, this is not Gaddafi's government. This is not Saddam Hussein's government. This is not Hitler's government. This is not Mubarak's government. The American government is a unique experiment for 250 years in the history of all governments. This is not England. When Queen Elizabeth comes to Rainbow Push, she sits in the audience just like everybody else. Because in America, the people govern. Wall Street does not govern. LaSalle Street does not govern. Rahm Emanuel does not govern. Jesse Jackson Jr. does not govern. Barack Obama does not govern. In America, the people govern. So the first thing we have to do is counter this negative Reagan propaganda, is to have the government do things that restores the faith of the American people in their government. Among the many things that the addition of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution did during Reconstruction, after the American Civil War, after Congress was in complete rebellion, was to help restore the American people's faith in government. Since the addition of the 13th Amendment, we've looked back on slavery, but we ain't been in it to look back on it. It restored our faith in the possibility of America. In taking over Herbert Hoover's mess of conservative economics and complacency, limited federal action and inaction, the first thing Franklin Delano Roosevelt did, his New Deal, was social economic security. Regulation of the Securities Exchange Commission, agricultural assistance, a Wagner Act that helped labor, the Civilian Conservation Corps, the Works Progress Administration. What it primarily did was restore the American people's faith in government. Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, whose war on poverty worked to reduce poverty. Medicare, Medicaid, Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the 1964 Public Accommodations Bill, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. It restored our faith in government. The 19th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, for every woman who can hear my voice, without the 19th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, you could not vote. And because we amended the Constitution of the United States, the 19th Amendment brought America a little more time. Now women can look to Hillary Clinton and to Michelle Bachmann and to others who run for office because their faith in the possibility of America hath been restored. Today, in order to restore the American people's faith in government, The federal government needs to jumpstart the private economy by priming the pump and creating jobs. Repeat after me. Move the money. Jobs, not cuts. Tax the rich. Stop the wars and bring home our troops. Move the money, jobs not cuts, tax the rich, stop the wars, bring our troops home. Let's congratulate President Obama for keeping his promise to bring all American troops home from Iraq by the end of this year. Give him a great round of applause. That war is over. What does move the money mean? It means we have to move the money to create a second stimulus. Not because the first one failed, it worked. It stopped us from going over the abyss. But because the hole was deeper than we originally thought, we must move the money. Republicans and conservative Democrats are like the man whose house caught on fire and he tried to put it out with his water hose. It didn't work. He should not conclude that water does not put out fire. That's the wrong conclusion. He should have concluded that he needed, mama, more water and a bigger hose. Your garden hose wasn't big enough. Obama's economic stimulus has given us 19 months of private sector job growth and creation. But it's too slow. It's not enough to get us back on track. We need President Obama's American Jobs Act. Give the president a round of applause. We need Rep. Jan Schakowsky's Emergency Jobs to Restore the American People DREAM Act. Give Jan Schakowsky a round of applause. And we need the plan that Rep. Jesse Jackson Jr. is putting together. The Invest, Build, and Grow Full Employment Act. Give Jesse Jackson Jr. a great round of applause. In March of 2009, Congress passed a $757 billion stimulus which was to have created 2.5 million jobs over 2 years. It succeeded, but it wasn't enough. In December, Congress passed $858 billion, extending the Bush-era tax cuts, which is expected to create 3 million jobs over the next 2 years, but it ain't enough. That's $1.6 trillion over 4 years that we've invested to create 5 to 5.5 million jobs, and we'll probably succeed, but there are 25 million people unemployed. It's not enough. We need something more, and something more efficient and more effective to put 15 million Americans to work. Tax cuts are the worst, the most inefficient way to create jobs. By congressional standards, $800 billion is not a lot of money. Somewhere I read, we've come to this place to cash a check. America has issued the Negro a bad check and it has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the great vault of opportunity is bankrupt. We've come to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. Get back to my speech. By congressional standards, $800 billion is not a lot of money, especially when it comes to jumpstarting the $15 trillion GDP that is the American economy. Mama, thank you for sending me to North Carolina A&T State University to get my degree in economics. Thank you, Mama. Sometimes my mama looks at me and says she thinks she wasted her money on my education. We can afford it. because we can move money from those who have it to those who need it and not hurt anybody. We need to do what FDR did during the Great Depression. Have the federal government directly hire the American people. In times of economic crisis, the government has a crucially important role to play. People matter, and results, Brother Carlos, do count. We don't need to go back in history to find these examples. Michael Hiltzik, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author and LA Times reporter, explored this issue in his latest book, The New Deal, A Modern History. He writes, the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, produced 1,000 miles of new and rebuilt airport runways, 651,000 miles of highway, 124,000 bridges, 8,000 parks, 18,000 playgrounds and athletic fields, some 84,000 miles of drainage pipes, 69,000 highway light standards, 125,000 public buildings built, rebuilt, or expanded. Among the latter were 41,300 new schools. The transformative power of this estimate, of this effort, was inestimable. FDR invested in and built up an entire region with the Tennessee Valley Authority. The Public Works Administration built or helped build the Grand Coulee Dam in the state of Washington and put 8,000 men to work starting in 1933 using materials from 46 states. In Southern California, the PWA helped repair or replace 536 school buildings damaged or destroyed by the Great Long Beach earthquake, March 10, 1933. In Florida, the PWA built the Overseas Highway, 127 miles of causeways and bridges connecting the mainland and Key West, and transformed the island into one of America's premier tourist locations. In New York City, the PWA built the Tri-Borough Bridge that connected 3 of the city's 5 boroughs, and it funded the building of LaGuardia Airport. Hoover Dam, once known as the Boulder Dam, is located in Black Canyon of the Colorado River on the border between Arizona and Nevada. It was constructed between 1931 and 1936 during the Great Depression. July 1934, it employed over 5,000 workers building the dam. Right here in Chicago, Lakeshore Drive Bridge was started in 1929, but the Great Depression prevented its completion until the WPA delivered the funds in the mid-1930s. When completed in 1937, the bridge was 356 feet long and 100 feet wide, making it the world's longest and widest bascule movable drawbridge right here in Chicago, a type of bridge that was developed and perfected right here and used for river crossings all around the world. So we got an economic model. The CCC, the WPA, the PWA, FDR's New Deal, if we just had the political will. Watch this now. Check my math. We can take $600 billion to jumpstart this economy by hiring 15 million people tomorrow. Now, this is anti-Washington speak and anti-pundits speak and anti-talk show host speak. I want y'all to hear this for the couple of minutes that I got left. Lord, I swear I wish radio gave me more time this morning, but let me tell you, you take 600 billion, you divide it by 15 million, and it equals 40,000. We can hire 15 million people tomorrow. Some being paid more than 40,000 because of their skills, some being paid less than 40,000, but on average 40,000. And put 15 million people to work tomorrow. 15 million people who will pay taxes on their 40,000. If we hire them tomorrow, it will be in time for them to have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And after a wonderful Thanksgiving, they can buy things for Christmas and have something really to be thankful for. And for 15 million more Americans, their faith in government will be restored. We ain't giving nobody no free check. People will have to work for their $40,000 until such time as the economy turns itself around and we begin to reduce the size of the payroll of the government that is supposed to be of, for, and by the American people. For another $104 billion, we can bail out every state in the union. No more problems in Springfield. No more problems in your state capital. Another $104 billion. So the Jesse Jackson Jr. plan has now gone from $600 billion to $704 billion. And for one more $100 billion, I can bail out all of the cities. And therefore, no more union problems for Rahm Emanuel and other situated Rahm Emanuels all around America. A year ago, we spent $757 billion to stimulate the economy. We gave tax breaks to $858 billion worth of Americans who, quite frankly, didn't need them. I'm asking for $804 billion to bail the rest of us out. Now that's that. Now I want to talk about something of utmost importance. Congress is in rebellion. Mitch McConnell said he has only one goal. And that includes if Congress never passes another piece of legislation as long as there is an America, he has only one goal: to make sure that Barack Obama is not re-elected President of the United States. Michelle Bachmann, a leading presidential candidate for the Republicans, says she has only one goal: to make sure that Barack Obama is not the next president of the United States. President Barack Obama, in order to get anything done, needs to get it passed by Michelle Bachmann. So the Congress of the United States is in rebellion. The president can get nothing done. So the only option that the President of the United States has is if we can do something, listen to me, without Congress. The President of the United States needs some big announcements that don't have to go through, watch this now, Congress. If he don't have something positive to say, he can't win. He ain't the only one who can't win if he ain't got something positive to say. As many of you recall, I came here earlier this year and asked the Rainbow Push family to support the Abraham Lincoln National Airport. I was humbled to learn that you did it in a big way. You told your friends, you told your neighbors, and most importantly, you told the governor. You expressed your support for the Abraham Lincoln National Airport Commission. Well, your message has gotten through. I am proud to report that the Abraham Lincoln National Airport Commission, or ALNAC, and its private developers had some very productive meetings with Governor Quinn throughout this year, including one just 10 days ago. While there is no signed agreement yet, I do know that Governor Quinn has a clearer understanding of what this airport is capable of doing to revitalize the Illinois economy. I also know that Governor Quinn has a clearer understanding that ALNAC is fully capable of building, financing, and operating a world-class facility in the south suburbs that will serve the South Side. But most importantly, I am clear that he is clear that we do not need taxpayer funding, not a single dollar from taxpayers to build this airport. And lastly, I know that Governor Quinn is under a lot of pressure to create jobs in this state, as all chief executives are of every major state. And frankly, there is no other jobs program that can compare to this airport. 1,000 jobs immediately. Another 15,000 jobs by opening day. Even a casino cannot match an airport in job creation. An airport is a jobs plan that just keeps on giving. In short, I truly believe that Governor Quinn and Al Nack are closer than ever to getting a deal to finally get this airport built. So once again, I want to thank the Rainbow Push Coalition for lending your support and your voices to push the state and the governor on this very necessary project. If you want to help me, help you. Governor Quinn's number is 312-814-2121. Call him yourself and tell him we can wait no longer. Build the new airport. But listen, my friends, guess what? I've learned that your voice has reached far beyond Springfield. In fact, your voices have reached farther than I could have ever imagined. Your voices have reached all the way to Washington and specifically the White House. In this past month, I've heard President Obama talk about the need to build new airports. Not once, not twice, but several times he said this. The first time when President Obama unveiled his national jobs plan, he said, and I quote, "We can put people to work rebuilding America. Our highways are clogged with traffic. Our skies are the most congested in the world. It's an outrage. Building a world-class transportation system is part of what made us an economic superpower. And now we're going to sit back and watch China build newer airports and faster railroads at a time when millions of construction workers are unemployed and we can build them right here in America?" Unquote. The president even noted that the only way to build new airports, new highways, new infrastructure is through public-private partnerships. That's the president's way of saying, y'all got to help me because Congress ain't gonna give me no victory. That's exactly what Al Nack has been advocating for the last 10 years. This is what President Obama said, and I quote, "There are private construction companies all across America that are just waiting to work. We'll set up an independent fund to attract private dollars and issue loans based on two criteria: how badly a construction project is needed and how much good it will do for the economy." Well, Mr. President, you know that's exactly what Al Nack has been saying for years. Chicago needs a new airport. O'Hare and Midway are operating at capacity and have been doing so for some time. The Southland area and the state, for that matter, badly need jobs. As you know, there's no greater jobs generator than an airport. And since delivering his job speech, the president has repeated this message on several stops around the nation. In fact, what he says is, listen to this now, take off your bedroom slippers. Put on your marching shoes. We have work to do. Of course, the Jobs Initiative wasn't the first time the president talked about the benefits of building airports through public-private partnerships. While running for the U.S. Senate, Mr. Obama said in Chicago Sun-Times in August of 2004, then State Senator Obama wrote, the construction and operation of a new airport near Peatone would bring 1,000 construction jobs in the next 2 years and 15,000 permanent jobs by the first full year of operation. And then he concluded, and I love this, I love it, when a president of the United States says something like this. I don't even need my glasses for this. Representative Jesse Jackson Jr., a key leader in the effort, has assembled a group of private investors who are willing to risk their own money to get the airport built. When a president calls your name, that's a big deal. To me, anyway. Well, I share his vision for a new airport in the South suburbs. The airport is bigger than just an airport for the Southland. This airport has global and economic significance for the whole planet. It means America is open for business. It means from the south side of Chicago, you can land in Beijing. It means we can do business in South America and business in Africa, and we can go places, and we're not hemmed in, we're growing. I want to conclude on this note. We have to believe again. And I was sharing with some members of my staff the other day just how many times we don't appreciate the strength and the depth of our own faith. Every time you get in a car, Reverend Barrow, and you drive down the street, whatever it is we're saying about our neighbors, we have the faith that somehow the car that is approaching us is obeying traffic signals. You've never stopped to think about it, but that is an exercise of your faith. Every time you stop at a stoplight and pray that the passenger behind you is watching the car pull up behind you, and you hope that they reasonably exercise the diligence to stop and not rear-end you and give you whiplash. You don't even know their name, you don't know their face, you don't know their economic circumstance, you don't know their social context, you don't know what religion they are, you may not even know what race they are, but you have exercised some faith in the person behind you that they won't kill you. When someone has too much liquor and gets behind the wheel of a vehicle, that liquor transforms a vehicle into a weapon. And the reason drinking and driving is criminal conduct is because they've broken the faith of everybody around them. That they were behaving accordingly to the expectations not of their own faith, but of somebody else's faith. Every time you get on a plane at O'Hare Airport or Midway Airport, and before the flight attendant tells you where to put your bags and buckle your seat, and in the event of an emergency, exit left, exit right, help the old folk first, help the kids with their bags. Before you do all of that, you unconsciously place your faith in a ground crew and in a pilot that you don't know, that they didn't cheat on the aviator's exam, and that they will reasonably take off on a runway long enough to safely depart and land you on a runway and safely return you to your destination. I know you've not stopped to think about it, but when you get on that aircraft, you're exercising just a little bit of faith. The dollar bill in your pocket is not worth the paper it is printed on. It is not the paper or the printing that is on the dollar. It is your faith in America. That when you exchange that dollar for a service or for a commodity, that it is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. When we place our children and drop them off at school on an early morning, and we put them in the care of a teacher we really don't know. We have some standards that the government has come up with. We have some criteria and some testing to measure their progress. We have some things that we parents look at when we get emails about what's happening at the school to appreciate the culture and the life of what's taking place around our child while we are at work or looking for work or whatever it is we are doing. Most importantly, however, when we drop our children off at school in the morning, we are exercising an unprecedented amount of faith that the teachers will provide a rearing environment for our children that they might be decent human beings one day. We're not raising murderers and thieves and crooks. That's not what we're doing here. We're counting on faith. I've been spending a lot of time lately in Moments, Illinois, and Grant Park, and Peatone, and Kankakee, and Bourbonnais, and Bradley, and all these new cities that are now part of the 2nd Congressional District. And I'm in Congress today because of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 for the last 20 years stopped at University Park. That's as far as the Voting Rights Act would go. But now because of Viola Luizzo, a white woman who got her brains blown out at point blank range and called a nigger lover, and then Reverend James Reeb, a white Unitarian minister who went south to help register African Americans to vote, and the state police called him nigger lover, and they blew his brains out at point blank range. And before there was a Viola Luizzo, and before there was a James Reeb, there was a Jimmy Lee Jackson who was trying to get people registered to vote, and the state police shot him in his abdomen and they called him nigger. And in June of that year, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 would be dedicated to the spirit of Viola Luizzo and Reverend James Reeb. They dedicated Section 2 and Section 5 to their memory. And Section 2 and Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 drew my congressional district, and it gave me an opportunity to represent. So now with the faith of Viola Luizzo and James Reeb, now white farmers in Hopkins Park and Kankakee and Bourbonnais, they are now covered by Section 2. Now civil rights gets to meet agricultural rights. Farmers fighting for a fair price and the Negro fighting for a fair wage. We coming together. You're not walking with me. You can't hear me. I'm gonna tell you something else and I'm gonna let you go. Paul Langer, I prayed with some farmers this week. They took me out to lunch after they had harvested the field. And I told them, I'm going to bring their faith from the south north. And I plan to take the faith of the Negro north and bring it south. And we gonna have us a great getting up morning. I want you to hear this now. So Dad, they took me to a little town. They got one little restaurant, one little cook, one little waitress, and they decided to feed me. And they sat down and immediately began talking about farm issues just before we ordered. Our food came, and I said, excuse me just a minute here. Do you mind if we introduce ourselves and then have a word of prayer? Farmer pulled out his Gideon Bible, and he said, I was going to say that if y'all never got around to it. I want y'all to hear this now. So the farmer began the prayer, John. A little different than the prayer I'd heard us pray. Watch this now. This farmer began the prayer a little differently than the prayers that we pray. We all believe in the same God, Al Penn, but it's a different prayer. I know it when I hear it. You see, it's harvest time. And every farmer who plants in one season expects a harvest in another. If you plant in one season and expect a harvest that's a different kind of prayer. In his prayer, he said, I want to thank you, Father God, for the sun and the rain. I want to thank you for good soil. I want to thank you for good seed. I want to thank you for not too many sunny days and not too many rainy days. I want to thank you for no boll weevils this time. I want to thank you for the right kind of pesticide that protected our crop until the harvest season. I want to thank you for the bounty that we've received, and for your goodness, and for the land that you've done for us, so that our family might make it to the next season. Mama, that was a different prayer. That's different than, and this is over our food now. This is over our food now. That's different, Uncle Saint. Thank God is good, God is great. Thank you for the food we're about to receive, for the goodness of great. Amen. Let's eat, y'all. Let me say that again. God is good, God is great. Thank you for the food we're about to receive, for the goodness, and thank you for the food that's in front of us. And Mama and Daddy, and come on, let's eat, y'all. That's the prayer we've been praying. God is good, God is grace. Thank you for the food I'm about to receive, for the goodness and gracious and everything. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Mama, Daddy. Thank y'all. Everybody healthy? Let's eat. Same God. There is a lot of factors in the harvest process that requires God's direct intervention in what they do. No, I can't say it again because I can't remember what I just said. Get the tape. Get the CD. Those of us who push paper, type in computers, and do the things that we do, ain't never had to milk a cow or slaughter a hog or leave no scraps on the table. Those who in the big federal government come to their farm and starts telling them how they should behave after they've been farming for 250 years on the same land. Their attitude about the government is a little different. I'm just trying to say something about, Mama, about faith. And then I close on this note. I've said that twice, but I shall never forget a great book written by Dr. John Hope Franklin titled The Substance of Things Hoped For, The Evidence of Things Not Seen. A great book, Dr. Proctor, Samuel D. Witt Proctor. And he tells the story of an African-American student who had come to his class at Rutgers, showed up unkempt, unclean, unshaven, and brought his dog to school. And had his back to the student at the time while he was riding on the billboard, but then he stopped and said, you know what, let me deal with this issue here. Now, how many of you all think that it is somewhat disrespectful for anyone to bring their pet to school? And almost everyone in the class raised their hand. How many of you think it's appropriate that, that someone can disrupt on their own whim the learning environment in a school? And almost everyone said, we think it's wrong. So he asked the young man to step out in the hallway, and he told him, listen, you're testing me. Don't ever come to my school unkempt, ill-prepared, and bringing your dog. If everybody brought their dog to class, we simply wouldn't be able to study our lesson. The only African-American in the class, all white students, that was that young African-American's way of saying, I got something to protest. Dr. Proctor was trying to convince the young man that he brought the whole faith of a people with him to a class in Rutgers, and the example that he was setting was an example to the broader culture. That if they left class able to say that this Negro is allowed to come to school in this kind of behavior, it would be a statement about every Negro that had ever lived. And Dr. Proctor wanted him to make that right. He said, now I don't have a lot of time to explain all of that, so I just want you to go home today, but you come back tomorrow and you come back prepared to do your work and your lesson. He then shared the experience of leaving class one day and getting on an elevator. Brother Langer. And he said he went up to about the 3rd floor, and a young white lady got on the elevator. And she said, as she entered, Dr. Proctor took off his hat. And she said, Dr. Proctor, I appreciate you, but don't you know chivalry is dead? They got to about the 5th floor, and Dr. Proctor said, young lady, if you'll step off the elevator, I'd like to talk to you for just a moment. What I was trying to say when I removed my hat, Brother Carlos, what I was trying to say when you held up your fist at the Olympic Games, what we were trying to say was, if someone had gotten on the elevator and tried to beat you, they would have had to go through me to get to you in order to participate in that barbaric act. What I was trying to say was, if the elevator caught on fire, I would not leave you. I would do everything within my power to make sure you get out first. I wanted you to know, to have unequivocal, unconditioned security in knowing that if someone came on this elevator to rape or to kill you, they would have to kill me first. I wanted you to know that there's some values that abide, whether you're black or white, whether you're young or old. There's respect and there's human decency and there's honor and there's an expectation that men have of women who one day will repopulate our nation and our world. And I wanted to say all of that. But because I did not have enough time, when I took off my hat, I meant all of the above. And Dr. Proctor said tears began to well up in the young lady's eyes as she began to socially transform the meaning of simple acts. When we give someone in America a job, people cannot wait, Mr. Governor, people cannot wait, Mr. President, Mr. Congressman, people cannot wait until 2018 to meet a bill. They can't wait until next month to meet a bill. They need a job tomorrow. They need a job today. They need a job now. Restore our faith in the American government. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Put your hand together. Put your hands together. Let's hear it for the Congressman. Put your hand together. Put your hand together one more time. I'll just sing that freedom song one more time. Put your hand together. Say freedom. Freedom. Now. Dignity. Now. Freedom. Now. dignity. Now put your hand